With the weekend price action being a little lackluster, combined with the fact that my one-off edgy videos always get the most views, for example, Who is Satoshi Nakamoto, Altcoin Review of Hex, Altcoin Review of Radio Shack, I figured now would be a good time to do a one-off edgy video of what happened to Dan Bilzerian's Ignite. Now, you might remember in 2019, this logo was splashed everywhere and anywhere. It was all over Instagram, it was all over billboards, it was on red carpet events, at parties, it was on bathing suits. The company seemed to sell a plethora of different products. They sold CBD, cannabis, nicotine products, energy drinks, apparel, event management, spirits, alcohol, but most of all, it did seem to be an apparel company. The logo was splashed on girls' bathing suits everywhere and anywhere. But then something happened in 2020. You just stopped hearing about Ignite. Just overnight, the company just vanished. Thin air, literally. And even Dan Bilzerian, he kind of vanished himself too. Where's all the Dan B gone? He stopped posting on Instagram as much. So again, that's why I thought this would make an interesting one-off video. What exactly happened to Ignite and what went wrong with the company? Why'd you stop hearing about it? So first, a little background. I'm pretty sure everyone already knows who Dan Bilzerian is. No introduction needed. King of Instagram, 33 million followers, known for his photos with a plethora of beautiful women traveling the world, at parties, etc., etc. Everyone knows Dan B. But then in 2019, Bilzerian kind of did something a little bit new. He launched a cannabis company called Ignite to much fanfare, but they weren't just a cannabis company. They sold tons of products, like all the other ones I said, apparel, energy drinks, spirits, all sorts of stuff. And in the beginning, the company was actually pretty impressive. So you saw them online everywhere, their huge marketing campaign, but they actually made some good hires initially. So this is February of 2019. They hired Jim McCormick to be their president. This was good. Dan wasn't being the president and CEO himself. He was actually outsourcing to someone experienced. And Jim had very good experience. He was previously the COO and CFO of Kushco Holdings. That's a $100 million a year annual revenue cannabis supply company in Orange County. Big company. And previously he worked at British American Tobacco and Procter & Gamble, 16 years in executive management role. So when they hired this guy, this is what he looks like here. I was impressed. Okay, this guy's definitely got the pedigree. I remember thinking, I'm not sure if this personality type, just looking at him, is going to fit with Dan Bilzerian and his crew, but at least this guy had the experience. And Jim brought with him his old colleagues. This guy was basically his number two. Ignite hires a month later. They hire Curtis Heffernan to be the new SVP, head of global sales. Curtis was previously VP of Business Development at California Natural Products. He also worked at Procter & Gamble and Cadbury Schweppes, so they were old colleagues at Procter & Gamble. This is what Curtis Heffernan looked like. Again, I remember thinking, just not sure if that personality type is going to culturally gel with the Dan Bilzerian crew, but I'm sure they'll be able to work it out. The team hit the ground running immediately in 2019. They were all over the conference circuits. Here's Jim talking about the company's plans for profitability.
Where there's capital injections needed and really to execute our game plan. Profitability, obviously early stage company. We expect to have relatively high gross margins. And so, we would look to be cash flow positive, certainly in 2020.
Cash flow positive in 2020, looking to be high gross margins. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. So, signs of trouble in paradise started almost immediately. So this here, November of 2019, only 10 months after Jim McCormick took the president role, Ignite International announces executive changes. President Jim McCormick has resigned from the company effective November 4th, 2019, and Curtis Heffernan has been promoted to executive VP. Curtis Heffernan was the SVP here that I just showed you. Now, at the time, it was what kind of president comes on, takes a hugely paying job in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then quits 10 months in? A lot of people thought it might have to do with the year end coming up and financials. Maybe the revenue numbers weren't quite as impressive as the team was hoping. Maybe their marketing campaign was just way too expensive and wasn't converting to sales. Nobody really knew. Maybe there was some shady stuff going on. Nobody knew. And unfortunately, the trouble lasted. So Curtis Heffernan only lasted 1 year on the job as new president. Then this came out. A year later, July of 2020, Dan Bilzerian sued. I blew the whistle on Ignite spending, and you fired me. That's Curtis Heffernan talking. So apparently what happened was the auditing company for Ignite, they refused to approve the audit because they found $843,000 in company expenses that appeared to be personal in nature when they did their audit. Among them was a $500,000 yacht rental. Kind of sounds like 3 Arrows Capital there. $65,000 Star Wars set, $75,000 paintball field, $26,000 to boost Bilzerian's Instagram followers, and then $200,000 a month rental mansion in Los Angeles. That was this house here. It's one of the most expensive homes in Los Angeles. So Heffernan tried to convince Bilzerian to at least dump the $200,000 a month mansion. Not a bad idea since it was COVID climate. People were cutting down on costs. He couldn't have parties. But he was promptly shut down by Bilzerian. At that point, the suit claims Bilzerian jumped in as chairman of the board and said, I am going to be doing some summer pool parties and will utilize the house. This was 3 months of the pandemic with social distancing. Remember, nothing stops Bilzerian. And then here's where it just got weird. So, again, they went back and forth a little, and then Heffernan, just given the company had very large losses in 2019, which I'll cover in a sec, Heffernan was very uncomfortable approving these, quote, personal expenses, questionable expenses, and the $200,000 a year house. Here's what got weird. When Heffernan expressed reservations about approving the expenses, Bilzerian accused him of taking drugs and acting strange, and then Bilzerian promptly fired Heffernan on June 8th. So maybe the acting strange, maybe Heffernan was just kind of nervous around so many beautiful women walking around. Maybe he was just intimidated by Bilzerian, and maybe he was just a weird guy. Whatever it is, Bilzerian did not like being called out on his excess budget, and he promptly fired Heffernan. And then Heffernan countersued, and this lawsuit is still going on in the courts as far as I know. So then, the next week, at this point, Ignite is kind of getting tired of putting out these regular press releases, and now they're kind of going into lazy mode. They just put out a press release brief here. Ignite hires new president. There's a third president. They've hired Lester Lee with a proposed start date of June 15th. So he was the interim president, and then 3 months later, not a surprise, but he was the interim president, so this wasn't all that bad. And Lester Lee resigned effective August 31st, 2020, and then here's another press release announcing their new president, John Schaefer. So that's 4 company presidents in a 1.5-year period. Again, 4 CEOs in a 1.5-year period. Not great, not great. Maybe, although Dan Bilzerian is excellent at social media, the king of social media, maybe is, kind of working with people, hiring employees, skill set isn't quite there the way social media skill set is. Who knows? So what went wrong exactly? So then if you look at the numbers for the 2019 year-end numbers, so here's where it went bad. So you remember seeing the logo, the huge marketing campaign online, billboards, Instagram, it was everywhere. Models were getting paid tons of money. It was huge and it didn't translate to sales. So you look here, 2019 numbers, and it's all in Canadian dollars, but the exchange rate is pretty close. $9.6 million in revenues. Sounds not bad, right? But then $22 million in marketing and promotion. So that's, paying the models in the Instagram campaign. So usually a typical company, a typical industry, it's between 10 and 30% of sales goes to their marketing budget. This was 2.5 times. And then it gets even crazier than $18 million of general and administrative expenses. That's like salaries, or rent for the big house, utilities. So it's $40 million total for marketing and salary expenses and rent on $9 million budget. That's 4.5 times. That is just crazy. So on their $9 million in total revenue, they had a net loss of negative $68 million. Again, $9 million in total revenue, Canadian dollars, close exchange rate, negative $68 million net loss. Not great numbers. In other words, the huge marketing campaign just wasn't converting to sales. And then a couple weeks later here, Dan Bilzerian did indeed take Heffernan's advice, even after firing him, moved out of the $75 million rented mansion, $200,000 a month, supposedly being behind on rent. They might have gotten evicted. Maybe he just chose to move out. Neighbors were overjoyed. Again, that's the wild house right there. But then it looked like things might be turning around a little bit later. So this is April of 2021, about 9 months later. Things are looking up. So instead of the $69 million loss in 2019, Ignite's loss was only $19 million in 2020. And then in one quarter, fourth quarter of 2020, they actually had net income of $3 million. So that sounds pretty good. They're learning how to cut costs, and maybe the revenues are there. But it wasn't quite so good. So how did they do this? They, on the good side, they slashed the promotional budget by 75%. That's good. They swapped debt shares. They were able to swell their accumulated deficit to more than $100 million. And then their biggest income streams continued to be debt shares and share reissuances in their own stock, despite revenues being at a high of $16 million. But the $16 million revenue really wasn't that great, because it says nearly all of the sales Ignite recorded was as a wholesaler, not as a retailer branded product. So that means that they were very good at getting into the retail outlets. They had a great sales team that had great relationships with the retail store owners, but the end consumers just weren't buying the products. The products were on the shelves, the consumers weren't buying them. So the core of the business just wasn't doing well, despite the team having very good sort of kind of creative accounting practices, you could say. Then Dan Bilzerian, during the pandemic, kind of shifted gears even more. He announced here he's writing a book. Remember, the social distancing in practice. The book came out to not much fanfare. 200 reviews. It's not bad. I didn't read about it too much when it came out. I did see when it first came out here, late 2021, the price was $100 for hardcover. Then a couple months later, they just magically dropped down to $34, and that's what it is. So it's almost like Dan was just ignoring supply and demand and just kind of choosing a random high price point, seeing who would buy. And then when the sales weren't quite up to his expectations, they just lowered it to $34. I mean, if it's lowered from $100 to $80, that's one thing. $100 to $34, business savvy supply and demand just isn't really coming in handy here. And then, after that, so this is November 2021, about 8 months ago, then Dan Bilzerian exits the cannabis business, pivots full-time to tobacco. So now they're fully in, so non-cannabis, non-CBD, they're just in the spirits, they have the book sales, they're selling tobacco products, energy drinks, apparel. So at this point, it kind of seems to be mostly just an apparel company, just the bathing suits, the great brand, but sort of a confusing overall image. I'm not quite sure what they are selling. And that's it there. So anyways, price action crypto is just a little lackluster. So every once in a while, maybe 5% of my total videos are just going to be a one-off sort of edgy video like this, because I have noticed the edgy videos, who is Satoshi Nakamoto, or altcoin reviews, stuff like that, they do get higher views, they do get longer watch times, they do have higher click-through rates. So I just thought this would be a fun thing to do, especially since the excess spending did seem to parallel the Three Arrows Capital blow-up. Minus the girls. I'm not sure the Three Arrows Capital had a bunch of girls on their yacht, but yacht parties, excess spending, and not really having the returns of the sales to back it up. That's it for today. Be back with a new episode. Please hit the like and subscribe button here. That helps me out. Follow me on Twitter at bencryptoshow. I'll see everyone tomorrow. Ben Crypto signing out. Later.